For the last couple of months, I've noticed the same car passing through my neighborhood at the same time every single evening. At precisely 11:54 p.m. each night, I hear the deep growl of its engine as it comes driving down the street, and then it stops right in front of my house and just sits there for an entire minute before it drives off. Just because I was so curious, I used the stopwatch on my phone a few times to time it, and it always sits there for exactly 60 seconds. I'm usually in bed at that time, but whenever I hear it coming, I always leap out from beneath the covers and rush over to my bedroom window to catch a glimpse of it. And the first time that I saw it, I was shocked to see that it was a hearse. I can't imagine why a hearse would be driving around so late at night. I toss my journal and pen down on the bed when I hear the familiar sound, that deep growl of the engine, and I dash over to my bedroom window, kneel down, and push the curtain aside to peek out. Here it comes. I quickly glance over at the alarm clock on my nightstand. Yup, right on cue. 11:54, just like always. Just as I turn back around, the hearse stops right in front of my house, and a thick, suffocating trail of smoke pours from its exhaust pipe. Then after a minute passes by, it goes zooming down the road. The scent of gas lingers in the air once it swerves around the corner onto the next street and disappears. I close my window, then walk back over to the bed and climb beneath the covers. Then I grab my journal and pen and continue writing. I've tried to ask my parents if they've seen or heard the hearse passing by at night, but they either flat out ignore me or always change the subject. Plus, Mom goes to bed at like 9 every night, so by the time it drives past, she's probably dead asleep, and Dad sleeps like a bear during hibernation. I remember the other day I got so frustrated that I just butt right into their conversation while the two of them were talking, and I asked about it again. Dad just kind of gave me a weird look, but still didn't respond. But my friend Grace, who lives down the street, has seen it too. Well, she didn't at first, until I brought it up to her, and then she stayed up late one night and saw it drive by. And ever since then, now after it sits in front of my house for a minute, it drives up the street a little bit and sits in front of hers for exactly a minute too. And there's no reason at all for it to be stopping, because there aren't any stop signs or yield signs on our street. It's just a straight shot until you get to the corner. And the strange thing is that when Grace asked her parents about it, she said that they changed the subject too. It's kind of weird, like only kids can see it or something. And another thing that's really odd is that no matter how many times I've tried, I can never catch a glimpse of the driver. No matter how bright the moon is, even if everybody on the entire block has their porch lights on, even when every single street light is glowing brightly, all I can see is a dark shadow behind the wheel. But what doesn't make any sense is that I can make out every other detail of the car. Its glossy black paint, its shiny alloy rims, the rust caked up around the exhaust pipe, the dent in the passenger side door, the mud crusted in between the grooves on the tires like it just came from off-roading, and the one front headlight that appears to have been busted out. And all of the mystery surrounding it is what has made me and Grace decide to follow it and see exactly where it goes. The only reason we didn't do it tonight is because her dad had to work late. He didn't get home until 11, and she was worried that when she tried to sneak out, he'd still be up. So we've chosen tomorrow night to do it instead. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous. I mean, what if the driver sees us and decides to give us a scare, and they turn the hearse around and come chasing after us, nearly running us off of the road? Or what if we discover that they're up to no good? But I push all of those crazy thoughts to the back of my mind because my curiosity overpowers all of them. Suddenly I hear footsteps coming down the hallway, and that's when I close my journal and gently place it in my nightstand drawer just like I do every night. Then I snuggle beneath the covers and close my eyes just as Dad opens my bedroom door a crack. A moment later, he closes it and then heads to the kitchen. This is his nightly routine. Every night he'll come in to check on me. I can hear him in the kitchen now. It sounds like he's getting a glass from the cabinet and filling it with ice. And finally, the fridge opens. I assume he's getting some water, and after I hear the fridge door slam closed, he trudges back down the hallway to his room. The next morning, I wake up around noon and get dressed, then head downstairs and grab a quick bite to eat. Since it's summer vacation, I have the house to myself during the day while my parents are at work. Mom always leaves a list of chores for me to do sitting on the counter, so I get started on them. Around 4 p.m., I only have one thing left to do. Wait a second, clean the garage. I could have sworn I did that already, I think to myself. So I head out there and see that it looks halfway done, so I guess I must have started on it and just never finished. While I'm working on cleaning out the rest of the garage, Grace comes darting across the street. "So, are you ready for tonight?" she asks excitedly. "Yeah, are you?" "You know I am. I've only been waiting for this all week." "Grace, come on, let's go," her little brother Garrett shouts from across the street. "I gotta go. I'm taking him to the park. Hey, do you want to come with us?" "I can't. I've got to finish this before my parents get home," I answer, pointing to the messy garage. "All right, I guess I'll see you tonight then," she says with a huge smile on her face as she sprints away. Later that night after dinner, I sit down in the living room and watch a movie with Dad. Mom does some laundry and cleans up the kitchen, and then she heads to bed. After the movie ends, I kiss Dad on the forehead and say goodnight, then go to my room. He comes in 15 minutes later just to check on me one last time before he goes to bed. Once he's gone, I write in my journal for a little while, and an hour later when I open my door a crack, peek out into the hallway and hear him snoring, I know that the coast is clear. I slip my sneakers and jacket on, toss my house keys and cell phone into my fanny pack, and then buckle it around my waist. Then I stuff some pillows under my blankets to make it look like I'm asleep, just in case my dad wakes up and comes back to check on me again. As the allotted time draws near for me to go meet Grace, I pace back and forth in front of the window, nibbling at my nails like a famished mouse. I glance over at the clock. 11:40. Time to go. So I quietly tiptoe down the hallway and then sneak out the front door, making sure to lock it behind me. Then I grab my bike and start pedaling toward Grace's house, as all of the reasons why we probably shouldn't do this start flooding through my head. The cool night breeze blows, hitting me in the face, blowing my bangs around that are sticking to the perspiration on my forehead. I pull up to the curb in front of Grace's. "Psst, psst, Michelle, over here." I look around and find her on the side of her house, crouched down next to her bike, so I drag my bike up over the curb and meet her over there. "You ready?" she questions. "I guess so. But listen, I've been thinking. Are you sure this is a good idea? We don't know who this person is or what they're capable of doing if they catch us following them. What if there's some psycho?" Hello? That's why we're doing this. Because we don't know who this mysterious person is. This was your idea in the first place. I thought you said that you wanted to find out." Before I even get the chance to answer, the loud, deep growl of its engine floods the air. Grace stands up and hops on her bike, so I do the same. After it stops and sits in front of both of our houses for a minute, it goes zooming down the street and we race after it, staying a little ways behind it, trying to keep some distance. The smoke pouring from its exhaust pipe provides some camouflage. As we chase after it, my heart pounds so fast and hard, it feels as though it's about to come right through my chest. As we turn the corner onto the next street, the hearse picks up speed, and it gets so far ahead of us that I start to think, this is it, the chase is about to end before we even find out anything. But then suddenly, the driver presses on the brakes and begins to creep along so slowly, it seems like the hearse is about to run out of gas. Instantly I think, we're screwed. They must have seen us following them. But then, out of nowhere, a little boy appears, standing on the sidewalk. He looks to be about maybe 6 years old and has chestnut brown hair. He's barefoot, but wearing pajamas. I can't be sure because he's still a good distance away, but I think they have different types of dinosaurs all over them. And he has a red and blue cape tied around his neck and shoulders. As we get closer, he turns slightly, and I can see the Superman logo on the back of it. Then, just as the hearse comes to a stop, the little boy steps down off of the curb and trots over to the passenger side door. Grace and I stop and just wait to see what's going to happen. "What do you think they're doing?" Grace whispers as the door swings open. "I don't know," I reply, as the little boy turns and glares in our direction, causing my bones to freeze. It feels like his eyes are cutting right through me like daggers. They seem to glow in the darkness, a color so abnormal that I can't even describe it. Then he climbs inside and the hearse goes speeding away. Even though we're only one street over from the one that both Grace and I live on, I don't recognize the boy. And I know a bunch of other people who live over here on the street, but I can't say that I've ever seen him before tonight. The two of us go chasing after the hearse once again as it drives out of our neighborhood all the way through town and then across a bridge into the next town over. Then we lose sight of it. "Where did it go?" I ask Grace. "I don't get it. It's like it just disappeared." "Come on, let's just go a little further. Maybe we'll catch up with it again," I tell her. But she's reluctant to go. "Michelle, I don't know. It's the middle of the night. Who knows what kind of weirdos are lurking around out here in the shadows?" So we decide to go back home and try to follow it again tomorrow night. So the next night we sneak out again and meet up even earlier. "Look, we have to stay right on its tail tonight. We can't leave any distance between us and the hearse or it will get away again," I tell Grace. "I don't know. That sounds really dangerous." After trying to persuade her for almost an hour that this is a good idea, she finally agrees and we get into position. As we wait for the hearse to show up, Grace's little brother Garrett comes outside onto the front porch. "Oh man, he must have saw me sneak out and now he came to look for me. I hope he didn't wake up Mom and Dad." Garrett, get back inside," she whispers loudly. Just as he turns in our direction, the hearse comes zooming down the street. "Garrett, hurry up, get over here," I shout. But instead of heading over to the side of the house where Grace and I are standing, he starts walking to the curb. "What is he doing?" I whisper. Grace continues to scream his name over and over as he walks down their driveway, getting closer to the road and to the hearse that is now approaching Grace's house. "Oh my God, it's going to take him. Michelle, we have to do something." Just as it comes to a stop and Garrett steps down off of the curb into the road, she goes racing after him and manages to grab him right as the passenger door starts to swing open. She pulls him back up onto the curb as the hearse zooms away, and I hop on my bike and go pedaling after it as fast as I can. "Grace, come on," I scream as I pass by her. She shouts at Garrett to go back inside and then rushes back over to the side of the house and grabs her bike and starts pedaling after me. We go chasing after the hearse, determined now more than ever to find out where it goes. This time we follow it to another neighborhood that I'm not familiar with, about 10 minutes away from where we live. I'm thinking, this is it, we've got the bastard. This must be where they live. But when the hearse slows down and I see a woman wearing a long flowing white dress appear, step down off of the curb and start approaching it, a chill runs straight through me. Just as the door swings open and she's about to step inside, I catch a glimpse of her back. There's a small circle of blood soaking through the back of her dress. She quickly slides inside and the door closes behind her, and then again, just like the night before, the hearse goes speeding away and we lose sight of it. So we go back home, and then the next day Grace comes over after my mom and dad leave for work. "Why do you think they tried to take Garrett? What do you think is happening to all of those people?" I ask her. "I think that the driver must be a serial killer, hypnotizing them to get into the hearse and then murdering them. If I hadn't saved Garrett, I don't even want to think what could have happened to him." "Do you think we should call the police?" "For what? Do you really think they will believe us when our own parents don't? No one else has even seen it besides you, me, and Garrett. Who's going to listen to a bunch of kids anyway?" "Well, I'm not sure about your serial killer theory. I don't know how anyone could go on killing people in these same few towns and continue to get away with it. I think something more paranormal might be going on. It's really strange how no adults can see it unless they're the ones who are being taken by it. I even saw my dad staring out the window late one night, smoking a cigarette after him and my mom had an argument. And when it stopped in front of our house, he didn't even glance at it. He just stood there with a sad and gloomy look on his face. But how could he not notice a big black hearse just sitting outside of our house? I think he would find that odd, especially after I've already told him about it numerous times. Grace and I continue to follow the hearse every night for the next 2 weeks. And every night it goes down a different street and stops in a different neighborhood. Sometimes it doesn't pick up anyone at all, at least that we can tell, because every night eventually we lose sight of it. And then other times it picks up 1 to 2 people at all hours of the night. First it was the little boy wearing the cape, then the woman in the white dress. But we've seen it pick up people of all different ages. One night there was this elderly man. He was standing on the curb, hunchbacked, holding a cane in his one gnarled hand. And when the hearse pulled up, he looked hesitant to approach it. It took him a while to get over there. I don't know if it was because he was so feeble and weak, or if he was procrastinating because he was scared. But just when I thought that the hearse was going to pull off and leave him behind, he finally made it and climbed inside. Then another night, a woman in a hospital gown that was drenched in blood from the waist down approached the hearse carrying a newborn baby in her arms. She wouldn't take her eyes off of the baby, and she looked extremely upset. And then another night, there was a teenage couple. When the hearse pulled up, the girl tried to run off, but the boy grabbed her by the wrist and forced her inside. Then he climbed in after her. And the thing that really creeps me out about all of this is that after Grace and I saw the teenage couple get into the hearse, the next day I happened to walk past my dad while he was reading the newspaper at breakfast, and I noticed a picture of the two of them on the front page. So later, when I saw that Dad had thrown the paper in the trash, I grabbed it and took it up to my room to read. That's when I realized that the picture I saw of them was actually part of a news article. As I start to read, I discover that the two of them had been dating, and when they broke up, the boy started stalking the girl, so she got a restraining order against him. When he found out that she had gone to the police, he shot her, and then himself, and they both ended up dying from their wounds. When I go to tell Grace what I found out, she has some news for me as well. She's seen an obituary in the paper for a woman who looked really familiar. So she pulls out the news clipping and hands it to me. As soon as I see the picture, I instantly recognize the woman. This is the lady we saw getting into the hearse carrying the baby. Well, what do you think happened to her? Grace asks sadly. I don't know. I think maybe she might have died during childbirth. So after that, we look back at weeks worth of newspapers trying to locate obituaries for the other people that we saw get into the hearse, and we find one for each and every one of them. So they're all dead, Grace whispers in shock. Yeah, I think the hearse must be taking them to the afterlife or something. But I still don't understand why it keeps stopping at our houses every single night, and why did it try to take Garrett? I don't know, but maybe if we keep following it, then we'll figure out why. Yeah, maybe, Grace agrees. So we make plans to follow it again that night, and then I head back home. Then later that night after dinner, my parents sit down in the living room and put on a movie while I just sit in the kitchen thinking about everything that Grace and I have found out. Then suddenly, I hear my mom crying, so I get up to go see what's wrong. When I walk into the living room, Dad is holding her in his arms, gently caressing her back as tears stream down his face. Stupid tearjerker movies, I think to myself. But then I look over at the TV. Well, wait, this looks like Star Wars. I think that this is the new one I just seen a couple of months ago. But why are they crying when this is an action movie? Then I notice the case to the movie lying on the coffee table, so I pick it up. Yeah, just like I thought, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. But now seeing the movie case cover, I start to get flashes in my head of Star Wars posters hanging all over the walls of the movie theater, and a whole bunch of other images that I can't quite make out, and then I start to feel like they are overloading my brain. A moment later when they stop, I still feel lightheaded, so I decide to go up to bed. Before I lie down, I text Grace and tell her something came up and I won't be able to sneak out tonight. "Okay, I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow," she texts back. Then I grab my flashlight, head over to the window, and turn it on and off, flashing it 3 times. A moment later, Grace does the same. It's our little way of saying goodnight to each other. The next morning, Grace comes over bright and early as soon as my parents leave for work. I'm still in bed when she rings the doorbell, so I trudge down the stairs in my PJs to answer the door. "So what happened last night?" she questions. "I told you, something came up." "Well, is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I assure her. "Michelle, I've known you since we were 7, and I can tell when you're lying. What's really going on?" "Nothing. It's just something that I need to figure out by myself." "Really? Come on, just tell me." "No, it's something I need to do alone," I tell her, and then change the subject. But Grace just won't let it go. So finally I blurt out, "If we know that everyone who gets into the hearse is already dead, and it tried to take Garrett, well then he must be too. And I'm not sure, but it may be even worse than that. I remembered something last night. But before I tell you, I have to look into it more." "What are you talking about? Garrett is fine. He's at home right now playing his Nintendo Switch. And the last time I checked, dead people can't play video games." I don't respond. I just go on the internet on my phone and start searching car accidents. But when I don't find what I'm looking for, I ask Grace, "Do you remember what day it was that we went to see the Star Wars movie?" "I think it was January 5th. "Yeah, I remember because it was the same day my team won the swim meet." So now I type in on my phone, "car accidents that happened on the date January 5th in my town." Immediately, dozens of news articles pop up, and I click on the first one and begin to read. On January 5th, Michelle Montez and Grace Gibbons, both age 17, along with Grace's younger brother Garrett, age 8, were killed in a head-on collision by a drunk driver. The kids were on their way home after going to see the much-anticipated new Star Wars movie. The crash occurred at 11:54 p.m. and was witnessed by the occupants of another car that had also just left the movie theater. The driver, 34-year-old Bruce Michaels, decided to stop at a bar and have a few drinks after work, and then he proceeded to drive home while intoxicated. He has been arrested and charged with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter. I click on a few of the other articles, and they all say pretty much the same thing. Tears start to stream down my cheeks as I look back at Grace, who is standing behind me, staring at the phone screen in shock. "No, it can't be. This is all wrong." "No, it's not. It all makes sense now. That's why my parents were crying when they watched the Star Wars movie last night. And that's why both of our parents didn't believe us. They haven't even been paying attention to anything that we've been saying about the hearse, because we're not really here. And that's why my dad comes into my room every single night looking so sad. At first, we thought it was so weird how no adults could see the hearse, and only you and I could, but it's because we were already dead. That must be why it stops outside both of our houses every night at 11:54, because that's the exact time that we died. One of the articles said that we died instantly on impact. But if we're really dead, it says here that we died 5 months ago. Why didn't we just get inside the hearse that night?" I'm starting to remember everything now. I think it did come for me that night. I remember my dad coming into my room, and he sat down on my bed and started crying, and saying over and over again how much he missed me. I was standing next to the window, and I saw the hearse driving down the street. I should have gone, but I just couldn't leave him. I had to stay. He needed me. Then after he got up and left, I remember shining the flashlight into your window and flashing it, thinking that it would be the last time that we would get to tell each other goodnight. Yeah, I remember now too. I saw the hearse stop in front of my house, and I think I was about to go out there. But then I saw you flash the light, and that's what stopped me. I rushed over to the window with my flashlight and flashed you back. And then... She stops and lowers her head. And then what? And then I heard Garrett walking downstairs. I thought he was going to my parents' room like he usually does when he gets scared. So I told him not to wake them up, that he could just sleep in my room that night. But I was wrong. He must have been going to get into the hearse just like he was supposed to do that night. And I'm the one that stopped him. Just like I did when I thought he was going to be kidnapped. Grace, you didn't know. But you know what we have to do now, right? Tonight, when the hearse shows up, we need to get inside. That's the only way we're going to be able to move on and find peace. After a moment of nothing but silence, she looks up at me and says, "Okay, I guess I'll see you tonight then. But don't say anything to my brother. I'll find a way to get him to come. But if he knows what's really going on, he'll be scared." Before she leaves, I tell her, "Make sure that you and Garrett say whatever you need to say to your parents before tonight. This is going to be the last chance you'll have." She nods her head solemnly and then walks out the door. So later that night after dinner, when Mom sits down on the couch, I go and sit down next to her and grasp her hand in mine. "Mom, I just want you to know how much I love you, and I'm going to miss you very much." Then I give her a long hug and kiss her on the cheek. She smiles right after I do, and I can't help but wonder if she can feel my presence. Then I head up to my room where I know I'll find my dad. He's standing in front of the window when I enter. I walk up next to him and rest my head on his arm. When he starts to cry, I wrap my arms around him tightly. "Don't worry, everything will be okay. You'll be okay. I know you're sad and you miss me. I miss you too. But no matter how much you cry or how angry you get, it won't bring me back. I love you, Dad, but I have to go now," I say before kissing his cheek. Then I walk downstairs and out the front door to go meet Grace and Garrett. When I get outside, they're already waiting for me, and I can tell by the look on Grace's face that she's hesitant about this, just like I am. As I walk across the street and stand next to her on the sidewalk, I hear that familiar growl of the hearse's engine flood the air. My heart skips a beat as I reach out and grab her by the hand. We take a few steps forward and stop when we reach the curb, and then we just wait. I look over at Garrett holding on to Grace's other hand, and he's in a peaceful daze. I have a feeling that he would have been out here tonight waiting for the hearse, even if Grace and I weren't. As the hearse approaches her house, she squeezes my hand in an attempt to let me know that everything's going to be okay. I gently squeeze hers back, just as the hearse stops, and the three of us step down off of the curb simultaneously, then walk around the front of the hearse to the passenger side. When the door swings open and I get a glimpse of the driver for the first time, I let out a gasp. Sitting in the driver's seat is a black, wispy, shadowy, smoke-looking being, and it's wearing a black cloak with a hood. As Grace lets go of my hand and starts to walk toward the hearse, horrific images start racing through my mind of the tragic car crash that we were involved in. Grace was driving her dad's car that night. Usually he would take us anywhere that we wanted to go, but that night he wasn't feeling well, and since he knew that Garrett was going to be with us, he told Grace that she could take the car. All I really remember is us laughing and talking about the movie, and then I hear glass shattering and metal screeching when another car crashes right into us. Garrett climbs inside of the hearse first. Then Grace looks back at me as she climbs inside with a slight smile. Then she slides over, making room for me. I turn and take one last look at my house and see my dad gazing out my bedroom window. I give him one last wave, even though I know he doesn't see me. And then I climb inside next to Grace and the door slams closed behind me. Then, as the hearse goes speeding down the road, Grace grabs my hand once again, and I look over at her and smile. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.